What if I told you that the next time you lose a tooth, you might not get a crown? You might not get an implant. You might grow a new one from your own cells in a lab, in a dish. And scientists are already doing it. They are growing human teeth in Petri dishes, not plastic ones, not ceramic, living, growing, biological teeth. And the reason might change dentistry forever. Let's start with something simple. Teeth do not regenerate. Your skin regenerates, your blood regenerates, your liver regenerates, but teeth, once they are gone, they are gone. Unless you are a shark, and we are not sharks, though some of us do bite like one. Every year, millions of people get dental implants, metal screws drilled into the jaw, artificial crowns placed on top, and we treat it like normal. But it is not normal. It is a workaround. It is engineering filling in for biology. Now here's where it gets wild. Scientists have discovered that inside our gums are cells that remember how to build teeth. Embryonic development creates teeth from interactions between epithelial cells and mesenchymal stem cells. Translation? Your body once knew how to build a tooth from scratch, and under the right conditions, it might be able to do it again.
Hold on. So you're telling me my body has the blueprint saved somewhere in storage, like a biological Google Drive? Because if so, I would like access to the folder labeled Perfect Smile.
Except instead of downloading a file, scientists are trying to reboot a biological program. And that is very different from screwing titanium into bone. Researchers in Japan and the UK began experimenting with tooth germ cells. A tooth germ is the early developmental structure that eventually becomes a tooth. They took stem cells. They recreated the interaction environment. They placed them together in controlled lab conditions, and the cells began to organize themselves. Not randomly, not chaotically, but intentionally, like they remembered their job.
Tooth development requires signaling molecules such as BMP, FGF, and WNT pathways. These biochemical gradients instruct stem cells to differentiate into enamel-forming amyloblasts and dentin-producing odontoblasts. In simplified language, cells communicate, they coordinate, they specialize, and structure emerges. This is not random growth. It is orchestrated architecture.
Implants fail. Sometimes they loosen. Sometimes infection occurs. Sometimes bone density isn't enough. But a biological tooth, it would integrate naturally. It would have living pulp. It could sense temperature. It could heal micro damage. It would be yours, not installed, regrown.
Okay, that's kind of poetic. We've been patching ourselves with hardware, when maybe we were meant to repair with life.
This is not science fiction. Mouse models have already grown functional teeth. Human clinical trials are being prepared. Some projections suggest regenerative dental therapies could become available within the next decade. And when that happens, dentistry changes forever. The question is no longer, can we grow teeth? The question is, are we ready to? Before we talk about the future, we have to go back. Back to when you were smaller than a grain of rice. Back to when your body was drafting blueprints. Because teeth are not random. They are engineered by biology. And that engineering begins in the embryo. Inside the developing jaw, two types of tissue begin a conversation. Epithelial cells, mesenchymal stem cells. One gives instruction, the other builds. Think architect and contractor, except both are alive, and they communicate through chemical signals.
Tooth formation begins with epithelial thickening called the dental lamina. Signaling pathways including BMP, FGF, SHH, and WNT initiate reciprocal interactions between epithelial and mesenchymal tissues. These signals trigger differentiation. Cells specialize. Enamel-producing amyloblasts form from epithelium. Dentin-producing odontoblasts arise from mesenchyme. A complex three-dimensional structure self-assembles. This is not mechanical fabrication, it is biological choreography.
Biological choreography sounds like a ballet I would absolutely attend, but I need you to say this plainly. Are you telling me we once had the ability to build teeth from scratch and then we just stopped?
Not stopped, paused. Because once adult teeth erupt, the developmental program shuts down. The cells that once built enamel disappear. Ameloblasts die after tooth formation, and enamel, the hardest substance in your body, cannot regenerate. So when a tooth breaks, decays, or falls out, there is no construction crew left, only repair patches. Until now. In Japan, researchers began isolating stem cells from dental pulp and surrounding tissue. They placed them into a lab-controlled environment. But here's the key. They didn't just grow cells. They recreated the conversation. They paired epithelial-like cells with mesenchymal stem cells. They allowed signaling pathways to activate. And something extraordinary happened. The cells began organizing. They formed a tooth germ, then a structured crown, then root development. In animal models, the tooth erupted naturally into the jaw, connected to blood supply, connected to nerve fibers, functioning, alive.
Okay, that part is wild because implants don't feel, they don't respond to temperature, they don't sense pressure. But a living tooth, that's different. That's not cosmetic, that's restoration.
Correct. A biological tooth integrates with periodontal ligament. This ligament allows micro-movement and shock absorption. Implants fuse directly to bone via osseointegration. They lack ligament flexibility. They lack natural sensory response. A regenerated tooth restores full physiological function.
Now, here's where things get serious. In 2023, Japanese researchers announced preparations for human clinical trials focused on tooth regeneration therapy. The approach? Instead of growing full teeth externally, they are testing antibody treatments that stimulate dormant tooth buds already present in the jaw. Yes, you might have extra tooth buds sleeping in your gums. Evolution left behind spare parts. And scientists are trying to wake them up.
So let me get this straight. Some of us might have backup teeth in storage, like a secret biological savings account, because I would like to check my balance immediately.
Not everyone, but some individuals naturally have supernumerary tooth buds that never erupt. Scientists discovered that a protein called USAG1 suppresses tooth growth. When that protein is blocked, tooth development can restart, at least in animal studies.
The USAG1 antibody approach aims to remove inhibitory signals. Without suppression, developmental pathways may resume. The goal is not artificial fabrication. It is reactivation. This is biologically elegant.
But let's slow down. Because whenever we talk about reactivating developmental pathways, there are risks. Growth pathways overlap with cancer pathways. Uncontrolled cell division is dangerous. Timing must be precise. Location must be controlled. And human biology is more complex than mouse models. Clinical trials will test safety, target precision, long-term outcomes. Because growing a tooth is one thing. Growing exactly one tooth in exactly the right place is another.
See, this is why I appreciate Luma, because every time I get excited, she calmly reminds me that cells are dramatic. They either build something beautiful or throw chaos.
Cells are not dramatic. They are obedient to signal. The responsibility lies with precision.
If regenerative dentistry becomes viable, it changes more than smiles. It changes cost structures, dental surgery practices, prosthetic manufacturing industries, insurance models. And for people who fear implants, it offers something deeper. Restoration without foreign hardware, healing without replacement, a return to biological integrity. For centuries, dentistry has been mechanical. Now it might become regenerative. The blueprint was always there. We just had to remember how to read it. Whenever biology shifts, industry trembles. Dentistry is not a small field. Global dental implant markets generate billions annually. Crown procedures, root canals, orthodontic corrections, entire industries built on the fact that teeth do not grow back. But what happens when they do?
Okay, so now we're not just talking science, we're talking capitalism. Because if I sell drills, and suddenly biology doesn't need drills, I am concerned.
Exactly. Innovation disrupts infrastructure. Regenerative dentistry would not just improve outcomes, it would rewrite supply chains. Fewer titanium implants, less prosthetic manufacturing, different training for dentists, more biologically trained clinicians, more biotech partnerships.
Market transitions historically follow biological breakthroughs. Examples include organ transplantation technologies, stem cell therapies, mRNA vaccine platforms. When foundational science advances, financial ecosystems restructure. Tooth regeneration may follow a similar trajectory.
Japan is at the forefront. Researchers targeting USAG1 inhibition are preparing for early-stage human trials. The UK has explored stem cell-derived bioengineered tooth buds. United States biotech firms are quietly investing in regenerative dental platforms. China is increasing funding for stem cell research broadly. This is no longer fringe science. It is strategic science.
So we're watching a scientific Olympics, except instead of medals, it's patents.
Yes. Patents on growth factors, patents on delivery systems, patents on antibody therapies, because whoever perfects safe regeneration first owns the blueprint to $1 trillion shift over decades. And here's where it gets complicated. If we can regrow teeth, why stop there? Could we regrow cartilage, intervertebral discs, bone density in osteoporosis patients? What about limb regeneration one day? Regenerative medicine doesn't stay small, it expands.
Regenerative medicine raises critical concerns: equitable access, cost distribution, long-term monitoring of cellular behavior. If limited to wealthy populations, disparities increase. If widely accessible, quality of life metrics improve globally. The ethical variable is distribution.
See, this is where my heart enters the chat, because imagine growing up without access to dental care. Missing teeth affects employment, confidence, social perception. Now imagine regrowth therapy being affordable. That changes lives, not cosmetically, socially.
Tooth loss is more than aesthetic. It affects nutrition, speech, self-esteem, systemic health. Chronic gum inflammation is linked to cardiovascular disease. Dental infection can spread to bloodstream. Regenerative dentistry is not vanity, it is public health.
It's strange how something so small, a tooth, can shape how we show up in the world. You cover your mouth when you laugh. You avoid smiling in photos. You shrink. If science gives that back, that's not luxury, that's dignity.
And dignity is powerful. But we're not there yet. Because while animal studies are promising, human biology is unpredictable. And scaling lab success to millions of patients is complex. Here's the hardest part. Growing a tooth in a dish is impressive. Growing it in the right place inside a human jaw is precision medicine. The jaw must have adequate space, have proper vascular supply, align with bite mechanics, integrate with periodontal ligament. 1 millimeter off and chewing forces destabilize everything.
Occlusal alignment is critical. Improper force distribution leads to fracture risk. Regeneration protocols must integrate with orthodontic mapping. This requires multidisciplinary coordination. Biology alone is insufficient. Engineering remains necessary.
So basically, we're not firing dentists, we're upgrading them.
Exactly. Dentists become regenerative specialists. biology meets biomechanics, and the profession evolves. But here's the real shift. For centuries, medicine replaced. Now, medicine regenerates. That philosophical change is bigger than dentistry. It redefines how we think about aging, damage, loss. Maybe the body is not as limited as we believed. We thought loss was permanent. Science is gently asking, what if it isn't? Every revolution begins with something that seems small. A spark, a crack in certainty, a single domino tipping. Teeth might be that domino, because teeth are not soft tissue. They are complex organs. Yes, organs. A tooth contains enamel, dentin, pulp, blood supply, nerves, ligament attachments. Regrow that successfully, and you have proven that organ regeneration is possible in adults. That changes everything.
Wait, you just called a tooth an organ. Nobody told me that in elementary school. We've been casually brushing an organ twice a day.
Yes, and we assumed that once it was damaged, it was done. But regenerative science says maybe adult tissues are not done. Maybe they're dormant. Cartilage does not regenerate well. That's why knee injuries linger. That's why arthritis progresses. Scientists are already experimenting with stem cell-based cartilage regeneration. If tooth regeneration succeeds safely, confidence in similar therapies increases. Bone density regeneration, periodontal tissue regrowth, intervertebral disc repair. The domino keeps falling.
Regenerative therapies rely on 3 pillars. 1. Cellular source. 2. Signaling environment. 3. Structural scaffold. Tooth regeneration demonstrates successful coordination of all 3. Scaling to larger organs increases complexity exponentially. However, precedent reduces skepticism. Scientific confidence compounds.
Translation: if we prove the body can rebuild something complex like a tooth, suddenly rebuilding other tissues doesn't sound insane. It sounds ambitious.
Some animals regenerate limbs. Salamanders can regrow entire appendages. Why can't we? Evolution traded regeneration for scar formation. Fast wound closure prevents infection, but it limits reconstruction. Our biology prioritizes survival speed over architectural perfection. Regenerative medicine tries to reverse that limitation.
Humans possess many of the same developmental genes required for regeneration. They are suppressed in adulthood. Modulating these pathways is the central challenge. Reactivation without malignancy, precision without chaos, control without overgrowth.
That sounds like raising teenagers. You want growth, but not too much growth.
Exactly. Cells must grow just enough and then stop. That stop signal is critical. If we master controlled regeneration, we challenge aging itself. Because aging is accumulation of damage, microdamage, cellular exhaustion, stem cell depletion. Regeneration slows with time. But what if we could restart selective repair? Not immortality, not fantasy, but targeted rejuvenation. Teeth are just the beginning.
Okay, this is where it stops being about teeth and starts being about time, because losing things is part of aging. Teeth, hair, flexibility. If science gives even one thing back, it shifts how we experience getting older.
But let's ground ourselves. Regeneration is not magic. Complex organs like hearts, kidneys, and brains involve intricate vascular and neural networks. Teeth are comparatively smaller and more structured. Success does not guarantee universal regeneration. It guarantees possibility, and possibility changes funding, research direction, public imagination.
Scientific advancement proceeds incrementally. Teeth today, cartilage tomorrow. Organ-level reconstruction remains decades away. However, each milestone shifts what humanity believes is biologically feasible. Belief influences investment. Investment influences discovery.
So the real breakthrough might not be the tooth, it might be the mindset.
For centuries, medicine replaced. Now it experiments with restoration. That philosophical pivot is enormous. When you lose something, we've been taught to accept it, adapt, compensate, replace. But regeneration whispers something different. What if loss is not final? What if the body remembers more than we thought? Teeth may be the test case, but the real experiment is whether humanity is ready to rethink its limits. Let's step out of the lab for a moment. Out of the patents, out of the projections, out of the billion-dollar forecasts, back to something simple. You, your mouth, your smile, your future dental visit. Because this isn't abstract, it's personal. If tooth regeneration becomes safe and accessible, your children might grow up in a world where losing a tooth at 40 doesn't mean a titanium screw. It means a biological restart.
That's wild to think about, because for us, implants feel normal, but for them, it might feel primitive, like, you mean y'all used to drill metal into your jaw?
Exactly. Every generation looks back at medical history and says, they did what? Bloodletting, leeches, unanesthetized surgery, and maybe one day, permanent tooth loss joins that list. Let's be realistic. Early human trials focus on safety, then small controlled populations, then expanded access. We are likely looking at years before mainstream availability. Cost will initially be high. Insurance frameworks will lag behind innovation. Training programs for dentists will evolve gradually. But progress tends to accelerate once proof becomes undeniable.
Medical innovation follows predictable stages. 1. Proof of concept. 2. Clinical validation. 3. Regulatory approval. 4. Market adoption. 5. Standard of care. Tooth regeneration is currently transitioning between stage 1 and stage 2. This is significant progress.
So we're not in sci-fi territory, we're in early chapter of the textbook territory.
But here's something quieter. When medicine begins regenerating instead of replacing, it changes how we relate to our bodies. We move from mechanical thinking to biological partnership. Instead of asking, what can we install? We ask, what can we restore? That shift is subtle but powerful.
You know what this makes me think about? Forgiveness. Stay with me. When something breaks, we assume it's over. Relationship, trust, health, but regeneration says, maybe not. Maybe under the right environment, things can rebuild.
Biology is hopeful. It holds blueprints long after we assume they're gone. And sometimes, all it needs is the right signal. But we must also hold balance. Not every breakthrough becomes universal. Some therapies stall, some prove too complex. Some reveal long-term complications. Hope must remain grounded in evidence. Science moves carefully for a reason.
Optimism and caution are not opposites. They are partners. Progress requires both. Unchecked acceleration increases risk. Excessive hesitation delays benefit. Scientific maturity balances momentum with restraint.
See? That's why we keep Luma around. She's the friend who brings snacks and safety guidelines.
Imagine this. 10 years from now, you sit in a dental chair. The dentist scans your jaw. Instead of discussing implants, they discuss regeneration candidacy. A small injection, a targeted signal, a monitored growth phase. Weeks later, a natural tooth erupts. It connects, it lives, it feels. That is no longer fantasy. It is an active line of research.
I can already hear future kids saying, you mean teeth used to be permanent losses? And we'll say, yeah, back in our day.
Science does not shout. It advances quietly, petri dish by petri dish, trial by trial, signal by signal, and sometimes it restores something we thought was gone forever. Teeth are small, but the idea behind them is not. Because if the body can remember how to rebuild, then maybe our understanding of human limitation was always incomplete. The next time you brush your teeth, remember, you are holding an organ once thought irreplaceable, and science is learning how to give it back.